G'day and welcome to Inside the Spa Business. My name's Trent Munday and the aim with the show here is pretty simple. My plan each week is to bring you information, advice and insights on a whole range of topics that are in and around and related to the spa and wellness industry. I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on in and have a listen. And if you like what you hear, I'd love it if you head on over to the iTunes store and leave a rating and a comment. I'll reply to every comment we get, of course. And while you're there, you might as well subscribe so that you can keep updated with each new episode. Special thanks to Mick and Carly Simmons over at Spa Sounds for providing the background music that you're going to hear throughout each episode. Smooth, soothing sounds just like that is what you'll get over at spasounds.com.au, where they've got all your spa music needs covered. Pretty much everything from a single digital download to a fully customized collection for your spa. So head on over to spasounds.com.au, tell them Trent sent you, and I know they'll take good care of you. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the evolution of day spas. We'll take a look at how hair salons were part of the story, as were beauty salons. And we'll look at some of the early entrepreneurs that got this business rolling. And we'll take a look at where day spas are today and maybe think about where they might be tomorrow. So without any further delay, let's get on with the show. Any discussion about the history of day spas really has to begin with a look at the beauty salon, because that's where the modern day spa really evolved from. And beauty salons themselves evolved from hair salons, so maybe we should start our discussion there. Now, prior to the Industrial Revolution, women took care of their beauty needs at home. If you were a lady of wealth, you might have servants who tended to your every hair and beauty need, but if you weren't, you'd just work it out yourself. But towards the late 1880s, women started to find their way into the workforce in factories, shops, and sometimes even in coal mines. And whilst it was still a long time before they achieved equal pay and equal rights, of course, with this shift in the employment landscape, women now had their own money to spend. Now, whether or not the rise of the hair and beauty salons was prompted by a consumer-led demand for their services, or whether it was led by those early entrepreneurial women of the time looking for a new business as a way out of the factories and the coal mines, not sure. It's open for debate. But regardless of the motivations, these early businesses sowed the seeds of what we know today as the day spa business. The woman credited with opening the first ever hair salon was a lady by the name of Martha Matilda Harper, way back in 1888 in Rochester, New York. Originally from Canada, the legend goes that she came from a poor family and spent her early working life as a domestic servant for a wealthy doctor. And her employer imparted upon her considerable knowledge about hair health and hair care, including his formula for hair tonic. After his death, she went on to develop this hair tonic further using only natural ingredients. And she eventually moved to the United States, where she incorporated this tonic into her Harper method of hair care, which became the backbone of her Harper hair parlors. Other beauty products were introduced in later years as the business grew. As if all of that isn't impressive enough, Harper ultimately grew her salon business to more than 500 outlets by applying a new business model that would eventually become known as franchising. So she was kind of like the mother of the franchising world as well. In addition to being an early pioneer of retail franchising, Harper also introduced concepts such as flexi-time, profit sharing, and even childcare services for what was predominantly a female workforce that she had. And she's also credited with inventing the reclining shampoo chair for hair salons. So this lady was clearly a true innovator. And while Harper was creating history in the Northern Hemisphere, another American female entrepreneur, this time one who was originally born in Poland, had emigrated to Australia, where she would open the world's first known beauty salon in 1902. And her name was Helena Rubinstein. And like Harper in the US, Rubinstein also focused on natural ingredients. The secret to Helena Rubinstein's milky complexion, upon which she was able to build a successful beauty empire, was a simple ingredient called lanolin, also known as wool grease, which is actually secreted from the sebaceous gland of a sheep. Now, fortunately for Rubinstein, the uncle who she'd come to live with was a storekeeper in the small country town of Coleraine, which is deep in the heart of Western Victoria's Sheep District. so there was no shortage of wool grease over there. And over the next 15 years, Rubinstein took her beauty business to London, New York and Paris, and in so doing created one of the original global beauty brands. And whilst the hair and the beauty salon industry was well and truly underway by the early to mid-1900s, they were still very much the domain of the upper class at the time. The onset of World War II in 1939 was the precursor to what was a massive shift in women in the workforce. Hundreds of thousands of women enlisted in their country's military to help the fight, mainly in administration and nursing roles, of course. But it wasn't just in the military where women started to find work. With so many working-age men going off to fight the battles of the war to end all wars, there were no men left to take care of all the job roles back at home. Understandably, though, in this time of war, personal beauty care wasn't exactly a big priority. And then, with the war ended, the 1950s and 60s would become a boom time for the hair and beauty business. As more women began to enter the workforce, hair and beauty salons became mainstream. Women not only had a need for hair and beauty services, they also had their own income with which to pay for it. And so it just continued to grow and grow. And over the next few decades, hair and beauty salons grew, often as separate businesses, but sometimes they did combine. And today it's not uncommon to find a hair salon that provides only hair services, but there are many beauty salons that are also including hair services as part of their offering. And I think what's interesting is that a number of both hair care product brands and skincare or beauty brands have been successful in creating their own unique brand identity. And so too have a number of hair salon brands. But the same has not really been true of beauty salons. And I think the reason for this most likely lies in the self-service elements of beauty versus hair. I mean, if needed, most women can perform their own manicure, pedicures, facials, and apply their own makeup. But cutting and styling their own hair, however, is a much more difficult task, of course. Not only is there a greater level of technical skill required to cut hair compared to maybe doing a facial, but there's the added difficulty of trying to do so without being able to see the whole canvas at one time. I mean, like the back of your head. And even if they were able to arrange multiple mirrors at just the right angles, there's the added challenge of getting the right angle on the scissors to make the cut. So it's just not that easy. And yes, I do appreciate the irony of me talking about hair. If you take a look at my profile picture, you'll understand what I mean. Anywho, let's fast forward to the late 1990s, just as the hotel spa concept started to develop. At this time, beauty salons saw an opportunity to add new services to their menu. With their customers being increasingly exposed to spas in hotels and resorts, it made sense for them to incorporate some of those elements into their own salons. Adding massage services to a beauty salon gave customers another good reason to come on in and spend their time, and of course their money. Best of all, for the smart ones, it meant being able to charge more for some of the services they were already providing, simply by focusing on the pampering aspects that a spa would deliver. For example, add a 10-minute hand and arm massage to a manicure and it magically became a spa manicure. And that also adds another $15 to the check. And so, the day spa was born. And today's day spas offer an extensive array of beauty services, often including hair services too, as we've talked about. And in many ways, they've become the organisational face of beauty. What I mean by that is they've become a place where customers will go to be guided through what is a rapidly changing world of beauty. And with the major skincare brands creating dozens of new products every year, keeping up with the latest developments is for most people an impossible task. But a regular trip to your local beauty salon, that place with those faces that you know and trust, it'll set your mind at ease. Because your friends there not only know your skincare needs, but they also have their collective fingers on the pulse of the industry. So you can always be assured that you'll be getting the latest and the best products on the market. Or at least that's the value proposition anyway. So what does the future hold for day spas? Honestly, I think it'll be pretty much more of the same. With the continued commoditization of the spa business in general, day spas are going to find it a bit harder to differentiate though. And if there was one word of caution that I could offer, it would be to be careful that they don't get caught up in a game of one-upmanship, especially if it involves building bigger, better and fancier facilities. Because hotel spas over the years have fallen into this trap, and the end result has been a number of overbuilt spas that will probably never provide any sort of reasonable return for their investors. There may also be a temptation for day spas to go too far in trying to incorporate wellness options into their business. Now, in and of itself, I don't think that's a problem, but they do need to be careful that they don't lose focus on results-oriented services, which I think is what their customers have come to expect from them. If day spas continue to focus on providing tangible results for their customers, whether it's through hair and beauty services or general health and wellness services, I think they'll be fine. What do you think? Okay, so there's my thoughts on the evolution of day spas. Love to know what you think. If you want to head on over to iTunes and leave a comment, we can have a bit of a chat about it there. Of course, while you're there, you'd be mad if you didn't subscribe, and I'd love it if you decided to leave a rating too. As usual, I'll post the show notes over at trentmonday.com if there's any useful links or extra information that I think might be useful for you. And thanks again for the cool dudes over at Spa Sounds for being our music sponsor. In next week's show, episode 3, we'll take a look at the evolution of destination spas. Now, the older listeners amongst you might think of them as fat farms, which we don't sort of use those terms anymore, thank you very much. The younger listeners will probably think about them as wellness retreats. Either way, whatever you call them, we'll take a look at where they come from and where they got to and maybe where they're going tomorrow in a bid to try and get a bit of a perspective on this global spa and wellness industry. Thanks again for listening. I really do appreciate you taking the time and look forward to having you join us again for the next show. Bye for now.